Welcome to another episode of the Metal Roundup, your one-stop shop to catch up on all the latest comings and goings in the metal music universe. We, of course, have our regulars in Metal Burb, Drew Fortune, and myself, Steve OG. Lads, what's been going on in your worlds? What's new for you?
Alcohol, baby. Let's go.
Okay.
Coffee, baby. I'm so lame.
You can make it look like an iced coffee, Drew. They wouldn't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, this actually doesn't look as cool as I thought it was going to look. I had this idea in my head of what this was going to look like, and then I just caught myself on the screen, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll just go back to the old beer that we have. I look like a proper alcoholic right now, just two drinks floating around.
I know, Al. What else you got there?
It's just like a big tray of drinks beside me here.
A smorgasbord.
Yeah, man. Life's been good. We had the last episode with Mr. Rogan Josh, which means Steve were just briefly talking about how well that performed. So shout out to everyone who watched that episode. You know, that was a lot of fun.
Forget performance. It was a great chat. I really enjoyed talking to Rogan Josh. Such a thoughtful, good dude.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, super nice guy.
Yeah. But I think like the performance probably reflects how much we enjoyed it, and also that probably reflected on the audience as well. Like, it was just such a fun conversation from start to finish, and you know, maybe that's what's helping the performance as well, but everyone's winning, you know?
Yeah, in the future, definitely would love to have more guests, but right now, like us three, we have so much stuff to go over to. Metal has been bumping. It's been bumping.
Yes.
I have some personal like stuff that I've seen on Twitter that would make like some interesting conversations. But Steve, I know you got a whole slew of things to go over. So
Oh,
give us
well,
something.
I mean, I'm excited for that, but I know we always end up talking about Sleep Token, and I'm sorry, but not sorry about that.
Again.
But they announced their tour support for the UK and the Europe tour, and it was an incredible tour support. They're taking Bilmuri on tour of like massive arenas in Europe. Bilmuri, who doesn't play outside of like Ohio and isn't that well known really across the kind of metal universe. It's certainly not really in the Sleep Token sonic sphere, but it's clearly that band is big enough and cool enough doing their own thing with their own decisions. They're like, we like Bilmuri, we're going to take him with us. That's it. Period. And I could not be more excited.
Cranking my fucking Eden.
Yeah.
The memes have been great.
Yeah. Vessel, confirmed hog cranker. It's brilliant. So excited about it. So yeah, I mean, Drew, you don't have a ticket, right? But you're not even like necessarily a Bill Murray fan, so.
No, well, I mean, if I was going, I would be going for Sleep Token and then whoever else is support. I think that's kind of the thing with Sleep Token. They can literally bring on anyone, and it's fun, so they can just get away with it. But in terms of Bill Murray, now I've heard a few of his songs. Nothing's like, I just don't know enough about his discography to be like that excited about it. But is that a European tour as well? I thought it was just in the
States. Europe and UK.
Right. Okay. So
they're currently touring in the States, but not with Bill Murray. So this is in the back half of the year. This one, and actually, in terms of what they're doing in the States, I mean, spoiler alert, skip ahead to a different chapter if you don't want to know anything about the Sleep Token set list, if you're going to see a gig later on. But they played Euclid. They finally played Euclid live. They closed the set. And I could not be more excited. Because like that, I think if I hear that song live, I might explode into a billion shiny, glittering pieces of diamonds. I don't know that I can handle that song live. So I'm so excited for the potential of that. Assuming and hoping that they play that when they play London.
Have you ever cried at a gig before, Steve? And will this be the first time if you haven't?
Good question. Yeah, I've certainly been wet in the eyes a bit. I've not sobbed at a gig, but I've certainly had emotional moments. I had a moment many, many years ago when I finally got to hear Everlong by the Foo Fighters live. And it was raining, and it was at Reading Festival. And it was just a beautiful moment. I looked up in the sky, and it's like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, incredible song. One of the best songs of all time is Everlong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was the first song I ever played live myself. Like when I was in my band in high school, and we just did some covers at a Battle of the Bands. And the very first song I ever played on stage on drums was Everlong by the Foo Fighters. So it was this massively important song for me. And to finally hear that live, it was just it was an incredible moment. That thing where audio connects through the molecules in the air between Dave Grohl and yourself, and you just feel that. And that's what I'm hoping for from Sleep Token and Euclid. But I'll be shouting at everyone around me, don't look at me! Don't look at me!
Someone needs to do another edit with you talk. I don't know if you did the edit with the music in the background, but that's going to be another... I think, Burb, you said it, like some what was it? Some person climbing a
Hiking.
mountain is gonna.
The way that Steve goes off is just so inspirational. The way that he was just talking
so
about Everlong, the molecules of the air and the rain dripping down. Just like,
it's the best. Don't ever change it.
Other people will just be like, I went to a concert and I liked it.
Yeah, it was alright, I guess.
Yeah,
That's not
Everlong's
fun,
like a. But yeah, Everlong's like it's a classic song. It's like one of my go-to like guitar songs. Just find an acoustic, put it in drop D, and it's so fun to play. But one thing I really want to talk about is go back to the Bill Murray stuff, because I am like a fan of Bill Murray, especially the new stuff. Like a lot of people were showing me his old songs, and I'm well aware it's Johnny Frank from Attack Attack. So Attack Attack is really honing in on different, it's Beartooth and Bill Murray's coming, like new projects from that band. So that's cool. But what I love about Bill Murray's new stuff is the mix of country with like some metal riffs and some like kind of emo-y pop punk kind of vocals. Like it's so weird. And I it would be amazing, insane if Bill Murray is the man to bridge the gap between country and metal fans, because they're so polar opposite. But if he's on like a Sleep Token tour, because I actually tweeted that out, if he's the man to bridge that gap, and now he's on a Sleep Token tour, what if he blows up through this? That would be so cool. Like,
I think he will. I think the music is too good for him not to. And I think that's the same thing with Sleep Token. Like, yes, they were progressive and odd and unusual. They got these long songs, but the music's too good. So if you do find a hook into it, you're done. You're going to be just absorbing the entire discography. And I think Bill Murray's got that same thing.
Yeah. He definitely does. And then going back to the Euclid stuff, I don't have tickets to the Toronto shows yet. I don't know if I can get in at this point, but seeing Euclid live just makes me really want to sneak my way in. I want to see that song live.
Someone in my Discord managed to help someone else get a ticket to something kind of last minute. There's a certain website where you can refresh and there's resales or something, and they now have a ticket to go and see it. So I'll try and connect that person and figure out what that is.
Yeah, I should also just interview what's the opening band again? It's like what's his name? He did a feature on an Architect
Empire
song.
State Bastard.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're a new project from the guitarist, singer, songwriter. I forget his name, but they're cool.
Simon Neil from Biffy Clyro. I'm a massive fan of Biffy Clyro and of his. I don't like not yet into Empire State Bastards. It's fucking chaos, that sound.
Yeah. I like both from what I've heard on live streams and stuff. But yeah, that'd be cool to interview him. But Drew, are you familiar with Biffy Clyro? That's the name.
Biffy Clyro, I think I've heard of them through Steve. I don't know when that was.
I did a drum cover of one of their songs. Like, I've never heard these guys before.
I think I commented on your video before or something like that, and you'd kind of told me to go down the rabbit hole. But no, I haven't heard of them. Bill Murray, the same situation. I've had a couple of his songs requested on stream. Maybe I just didn't get the right ones. I heard his most recent one, I think, or one of the most recent ones, but maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace because we were doing like a lot of really metal stuff, and then I don't know, maybe that just threw me off a little bit. But it seems like something that should be up my street. It's kind of like a does he take like a meme approach to a lot of his stuff? There's like that element in the video for sure anyway.
The videos for sure, yeah.
Bill Murray,
right.
Yeah.
But it might also just not be quite your sound.
Yeah,
like it's a sort of tropical house meets, like, as he'd call them, like thick riffs and some country twangs and a bit of metal moments. It's an interesting mix, but it's definitely along the pop realm.
Right. Okay. Sometimes videos, I find that I've had this situation before with certain videos that are maybe from, like say lesser known bands that don't have the budgets to go out and do a really professional, like, video done by some team or whatever, that they go the opposite route and they say, right, let's go really down the meme route. But the song itself is supposed to be serious. I'm not saying this about Bill Murray, but it's just more so I kind of put it in that same ballpark with that meme style video where the music is trying to be serious, but the video doesn't reflect that at all. And your brain kind of then can't enjoy either the music video or the music itself, even though individually they might be really funny. Do you guys ever find that with certain songs where you're like, they've kind of fucked it a little bit for me,
I think that was the issue that I had with Bill Murray, actually.
Right.
It was until his new songs I felt like with Better Hell, I'm like, okay, there's a country vibe, but then it's also kind of joking and lighthearted. I felt like that video and that song paired really well. And then also with his new stuff too, Empty Handed was the same case. They're just like a lawnmower. It's like, okay, his identity is just like a dad bod, just dad core kind of music, just doing household chores with like these fun summer songs.
Yeah,
someone said it well on a comment that like you cry these, because I cried laughing on a recording reaction thing because it's just the song names are hilarious. Like you cry laughing at Bill Murray's song titles and music videos, but you cry crying at the lyrics. Like the actual lyrics are raw and about relationships, and they're so harrowing at times and tough. But I think when it comes to shooting music videos and doing the rest, he's like, you cannot hide that personality. He's just a madman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. But no, yeah, like, I mean, it wouldn't be even specifically about his stuff, but I guess that's just kind of where my brain was going to when I was watching some of the stuff. I was like, is this guy serious? Is it like a gimmick? Is it not a gimmick? Like, the music was good, but then the video is reflecting someone who is just doing this as a joke. But, you know, that was my initial thoughts and impressions of it, you know?
I totally get it. And on the flip side, actually, when music videos are directed so in a new way where it reshapes the band's identity, can be really cool. So actually, I interviewed Landon Tours from The Plot in You, and for you guys remember the music video for Don't Look Away.
Fuck, but, how could I ever forget?
Yeah, well, this guy, I think from what I can remember is that they were looking for like a new music video director, and this upcoming videographer guy, he really wanted to get involved, and they showed some of his footage and like, oh yeah, like we'll try you out for a video. And it was like a big risk because it's not like the band's identity. They're usually, you know, rocking out with like maybe a green screen or something else. But this time it was like this very artistic dude, and they were floored with the music video. So they've been using him for the past like 3 or 4 videos. And so I asked Landon, I'm like, is this reshaping your band a little bit as like the identity of your band? Because the music videos are such a polarizing different direction. And he's like, oh yeah. Like even our merch is like the color palettes from the music videos, we're matching them with our merchandise too.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, the visual aspects of music these days is as important, if not even more important, when it comes to, you know, first impressions. I hadn't heard any of the Plot and Use discography until I heard the Forgotten track. I think Forgotten was the first song. I just did that off stream. I think they popped up in my recommended, and I'd seen people talking about the Plot and You before, and I just said, you know what, whatever, I'll give it a go. And it was the Forgotten video, and I was like, what the fuck? You know, the song in and of itself is sick, but when you see the video combined with it, it was like, you know, so well shot. The synchronization between the music and the video was so well done. It was like harrowing, it was unsettling, and then they've rolled that into, you know, I know Closure was a little bit different. That was more of a you know, more chilled out song, and they didn't have the big high production video, but then they brought out the Don't Look Away video, which I didn't check out the video for. Yeah, you can tell, you can tell, like, it has that stamp of him. You can just tell when it's someone's particular, you know, visual work. But it's a huge thing for the brand, man. Like, I mean, that's like one of those bands that I put very highly up there at the moment in like modern metal, purely because one, their music is unbelievable. They're more modern stuff anyway that I know of, and then the visual aspect just aids it so much.
Have you guys heard Dispose by the band? The album Dispose?
No.
No.
I think both of you would really like it. It's like Bring Me the Horizon. It can get really heavy, and it's also, I don't know, some of the vocal hooks are extremely catchy. Like
to check. Yeah. Dispose, an album by The Plot and You.
Yeah, I think it came out in like 2018 or something. But yeah, it's a very versatile record. Like, because they do everything. It's like a little bit of R&B. One song's a little bit country, and then they have like the Bring On the Rise and big choruses, electronic kind of stuff too. Then those new songs, Forgotten, Don't Look Away, are just pure, intense metalcore. So a band with a lot of variety.
For sure. No, they're sick band.
There's a chance I've heard 1 or 2 songs. I did some video after hearing, maybe it was Forgotten. I went, who the fuck is this band? They're amazing. I need to do a deep dive. And I got recommendations in the comments, and I did like a multi-reaction video. It's possible that one of those was on that album, but I'd have to check. But they're interesting. They've changed their sound quite a bit over the years, I'd say. Range. I finally checked out Boundaries' latest album.
And?
Nice.
And it is...
I knew it was coming.
Here we go.
Party Pooper Steve.
It is the heaviest album I have ever enjoyed.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, and like Steve from 3 years. Fuck it, Steve from 1 year ago is shocked that I enjoyed that because it is full on. It's heavier and more relentless and more full on than the latest Alpha Wolf was, and that's a pretty fucking full on album. But like, Jesus fucking Christ, it goes hard. And the vocal styles are so massive and huge and heavy. But then when they have the strategic deployment of clean vocals, it's just like, oh my God. And some of the chord progressions are very accessible within there as well. And I just think it's a brilliantly balanced, fucking insane record. And I can't believe I enjoyed it as much as I did.
It works so well because I feel like the lyrics really come from a very personal, like,
it's harrowing.
Where it's like, it's like therapeutic for him. And some of the call outs are just so fucking raw. And so when he screams it, you feel it. You feel the anger. And then so when the breakdowns hit, it's just like, that's like some metalcore that actually can give me some goosebumps. Like I was talking about it with like most of the songs that I really enjoy that give me goosebumps tend to be prog because I love the big payoffs, the big crescendos with the breakdowns. It's like a journey, right? But like metalcore is just like, it's fun. It's fun to throw down to. But Boundaries, some of their call outs and the drops literally is just like nuts.
Heartbreaking. I was thinking as I reacted, like those moments, those call outs, imagine that live. Imagine a whole audience screaming something like massively self-deprecating in the moment together. It's going to be quite powerful.
Yeah. It's exactly like it's the exact same feeling musically that we've just discussed with the Plot on You. Like, is it the most dynamic music I've ever heard? Not really, but it's the emotion in Landon's vocals. Like when he screams out, even that like line before the breakdown in Forgotten is insane. I was only watching clips of it there before the stream of people actually like screaming it out live, and it's like, that kind of shit. Again, I'm kind of in the same ballpark as Burb when it comes to what music gives me goosebumps, and something like that is so raw and you can really feel it on a human level is just right up my street for that kind of stuff.
So it's interesting talking about it live because I just saw Architects last night. They're doing their North American tour with While She Sleeps and Of Mice and Men. And I love the Architects. They're like top 5 favorite bands. But then I hate to say it, but after seeing them live, I'm like, the new stuff. I'm not really a huge fan of the new stuff. Even hearing it live, I'm like, it's a whole different band. But I still want the band to continue in whatever direction that makes them happy, as they should. But for me personally, like they only played 2 songs that I actually really like on their entire set. And one of those songs was These Colors Don't Run, which is the oldest track that they played. But then there's this one part. I don't know if you guys have heard that song before, but
no.
The final breakdown is just monstrous. It's one of my favorite breakdowns ever. And so he like screams this part where like corruption hangs in the air, and then he just pauses and the whole lights shine on the crowd. And then he goes like, he's trying to get the crowd going with his arms up and the crowd's just like getting ready. And then he does this long scream for and then the drop happens when he says breathe and like that hits this low, which is goosebumps. That's live. Cool. It's so Boundaries would probably be the same thing too with some of their parts.
I don't. I mean, Architects. I've seen them a few times over the years, and I've loved them, and they're still a band I massively respect. They're incredible. And what's interesting though is something about the newer stuff that live, similarly, myself and other friends of mine who are big fans of theirs, live are kind of like, it's not hit. It doesn't really connect the same way that some of the more emotive things did. It's tricky, but that moment sounded great.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of new fans that were digging the new stuff, so all the power to them. They're blowing up. I'm just an old fan that likes the old stuff.
It's almost like they're like a victim of their own prior success because they're so successful in the modern era, but also they've been so successful with their music. Like they've described so many times as being something that when they were like angry teenagers, they made music for angry teenagers because that's how they felt in their life. And now I guess, they've garnered a lot more attention and a lot more success. So they're now not in that space anymore where they need to be like grieving and in that really like dark position. So they're almost like a victim of how good they were at doing that angry stuff, but they have a new era, which if you actually take out, like if I just look at Architects as 2 separate bands from like their earlier stuff that I've heard and their modern stuff, like I think their modern stuff, if they didn't have such good older stuff, would be respected a lot more. You know what I mean? It's because you have that older audience that are looking at it through the lens of, well, they used to be so angry, and you kind of have to just accept that that's not them anymore, and find one of the many other bands that are in that kind of same hungry, not to say the Architects aren't hungry anymore, but it's not reflected as much in their music these days. So
yeah. I don't go along with the angry line on this as a reason. I don't need them to be angry. I don't need angry music.
Fair enough, yeah.
You can have joy, because like Killswitch Engage, the fucking lyrics are not angry. Like, they're the most glorious and uplifting. They're still hits emotively somehow. And again, I fucking loved Curse by Architects, came out recently. I think it's just a straight up brilliant song. I know Jordan Fish helped on that, but still, it's a fucking great song. And I'm here to try and, see if there's new architects that I adore. But I think as well, to your point, of bands like Incubus, who were raw and energetic and they had this fire. And then over the years, they've become a bit more comfortable. They're not in the same like dirty, terrible parts of LA or whatever it was that they were in that helped inspire those kind of songs. They're much more comfortable and more relaxed. And their songs reflect that. And it's a very different sound. And you know what? Fair enough. Write what you know, write what you feel. That's what you should do. Don't try and write the old stuff that you don't necessarily relate to anymore. So like, I get, and power to the bands that go off in that direction. They're going to find new fans, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I totally agree with the sentiment too. That like, I feel like the aggressive metal bands, Architects, I don't know. I feel like a perfect segue is actually talking about Slipknot. It's like a common problem with metal bands where like they start off like as kind of like angry teenagers or young adults, and they evolve and they're not the same person as they were. So it's hard for them to replicate that sound for their entire discography. And so Slipknot's been having that issue with like their recent albums as they've gone a little bit more experimental, trying rock songs and here and there. So, and then the fan base can be a little bit divided at times because they're not really liking the new records. But now, speaking of new eras, Slipknot is entering a new era because their drummer has just been announced. They're having new mass. I think it's pretty cool. The drummer that they have is fucking incredible too.
He's a beast.
He's a beast. He's an absolute beast. And if Slipknot, personally, for me, I don't know if this rejuvenates them to be a really heavy, aggressive band again, that'd be really sick.
100%. Drew, have you seen Slipknot live? Have either of you seen them live?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah. They were my first big metal show that I'd gone to. It was kind of in and around the time when I first started to check out metal on like my YouTube channel, and they came to Dublin 3 Arena with support from, I think, who were they? I can't even remember. I think I just went purely for Slipknot because they were probably like the only metal band that I'd really checked out on the channel at that point. And yeah, I mean, I look back on it now. This was 2020, before the pandemic.
Okay.
2019.
Actually, 2020, I saw them in January 2020 before the pandemic hit. I think it was the last gig I saw before.
It was the tour that they did to roll out the "We Are Not Your Kind." Was that the album that did?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was that tour. So, that was yeah. Like, I mean, I'm not a big fan of even that era of Slipknot. I really enjoyed that when it first came out, and I was kind of just finding my feet with.
I've never listened to it again.
Metal. Yeah, I really got a lot of playtime out of it. I really enjoyed that album when it first dropped. But as my palette has changed over time with what metal music I do enjoy, I've just not gone back to it. And it was the same with their more recent stuff. I just feel like I can't get into it anymore. So maybe the new generation will, or the new era, if there is going to be one, will spark some more interesting music for me. Anyway, I know a lot of people still love it.
I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to think that the new drummer can inject some energy, as Burb's saying. Maybe that'd be the case. I've seen them many times over the years. The first time I saw them was 22 years ago. I was but a child. That was when that was early days Iowa album kind of stuff. And it was amazing and chaotic, and I wasn't into that kind of metal yet. So I was just like, what is this? And I've seen them be exceptional and absolutely incredible. And then they play Download Festival. They play Download Festival every 3 years. And the last time they did, it felt a little bit pedestrian, a little bit like, oh, we're just doing the same thing again. It didn't feel like the fire was there anymore. It very much felt like we're now a professional Slipknot band. We're going to play the songs, and that's kind of it. Until they played Left Behind, their old massive single, which they never play, and then the whole place ignited again. So I'm hoping that maybe this new era with Eloy might spark that. And they did a recent gig where it was like 300 people, a tiny little crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And you could feel that raw energy. And maybe they needed a bit of that to go closer to the people than on these big stages where it's just a sea of people. Maybe that's a factor too.
They did that for Sick New World though, right afterwards. I think it was like the day after or 2 days after.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. There was a tiny little gig they did with Eloy on the drums in the kind of new era. And I think that's it. Maybe they needed to reconnect with what that feels like.
Yeah, that's a good point. They purposely probably tried to get a smaller audience. I personally like smaller shows. That's a reason why I haven't seen Slipknot live, because they're just going to be playing the biggest venues and I won't get like a good spot, or I don't have connections really. So like, I'd love to see it, but I love the small intimate shows.
Yeah. My advice
is
always,
Aaron then, because that's
like
all we
band, go see them as soon as you have the opportunity, because they'll never play a venue that small again, whoever they are.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of bands that also like change their sound over time, is there a band that you guys like that have changed? You know, maybe they were metal at the beginning, but now they've gone softer and more experimental, but you still love the new stuff. Like you just enjoy the entire journey that they've been on.
Good question, because that is
very
rare.
good question.
The one I think of is Bring Me the Horizon, because I wasn't into their early deathcore stuff. I came on board during Sempiternal, and I loved that, and I loved That's the Spirit, and I loved but then they did Ammo. I was like, I didn't really connect with Ammo, but fine. And then they did that EP, the Survivor EP thing. That was pretty fucking cool, and they've come back so strong. Their new stuff I think is fucking brilliant. But that's the only band I can think of.
Yeah. What about you, Drew?
It's hard to top that one, man. Just pulling up my Spotify here to see if there's anything that really like strikes me, but
yeah, Ammo is like good. I like Ammo. I'm
warming to Ammo.
Yeah, I understand that, like, you know, it's definitely the most poppy record, but like I have a hot take about the band. Nihilist Blues is their best song.
It's a fucking amazing song.
Thank you.
They did that at Download last year. They had Amy Lee from Evanescence come on and do it with them. It was fucking incredible.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
That's kind of EDM stuff, right? It was cool. It slaps.
Oh, it's so good. Apparently don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it's based off like a death metal song structure.
Interesting.
And they just made some cool EDM song based around it. And also, like, I'm a nerd, and they put some Metal Gear Solid footage in their music video. It's like hidden. And I love that. It's like one of my favorite games. But I was just wondering, because like my answer to this is, again, like my favorite band, but Thrice. Like, yeah, that's a band that they are not heavy anymore. They're definitely much more chill, and they've gone more experimental, but I love their new songs. They're not trying to sell records to make money. They really just write whatever the hell they want. And so because of it, it's still genuine, real music that the band wants to put out, but luckily just the vocals and the instrumentation is still interesting enough. It's just not aggressive, but it's still interesting to me.
That's great.
Drew, you got one yet?
I'm just doing like, you know that meme of like the guy whose head's about to explode, where he's like trying not to say Northlane again on a podcast, but like that's
he just said Thrice. I think you're okay.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's just the one example I can think of. Obviously, I wasn't around for the very different era of Northlane. Not that it's changed drastically, but I think the direction they're going in is definitely the band that I can think of that I'm a huge fan of still. Like, I feel like no matter what they do, I'm going to enjoy it. So, yeah, that's the one I could think of off the top of my head. But a band that I wanted to bring up, but I don't know if Steve's heard any singles, but I think you checked out the new album, Burb, that's been doing the rounds on the lesser known scene, is Diamond Construct's new album. You checked it out, the Angel Killer Zero album. I know it's Steve, you haven't checked out anything?
I've never heard anything by them, I think.
Right, okay. Burb, any thoughts on the album?
So yeah, I saw you title your video "The Future of Metal" or something,
Modern
and
metal,
I didn't watch the video, but I thought that was an interesting take, because it could be the future of like the modern metal. It's just more new metal being bred into it. With Diamond Construct though, like I'm already like been a fan of this band for a while now. Even before I started my YouTube channel, I really dug their old stuff because it was a little bit more classic Architect sounding. It was a little bit more emotional gent metalcore that I really liked. And now with their new stuff, they're really trying to do new metal. And so the new metal could be like some spoken rap parts, or it could be a lot of pitch shifters on the guitar. And the new album for me was just like a weird culmination of metal and trap elements and rap, with the guitars having so much bounce, and the riffs are fucking insane. The way that he uses a pitch shifter is unlike anybody else in the scene, so it's really, really creative. But man, 11 or 12 songs, I'm like, I actually found the album annoying. So it was way too much of a good thing. If I always say less is more, and for me, a less is more approach would have been better with that. I wish there was different sounds rather than just crazy pitch shifted like guitars, like for what, the 40 minutes. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, but what about you, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, like I did say the future, but I did specifically have a question mark on it, so it wasn't like me stating. You know how it is with titles.
Get out of jail free card.
The future of metal. Sorry, that's how I should say
exactly.
It.
Yeah, that's how you should. Yeah, but no, I'm in the same ballpark. I was more so the conversation point that I did bring up was, I don't know if you guys have heard Buster Odahome from Viljarta and Humanity's Last Breath and Throne and every other project in modern metal, but he did a interview with Ola. You know Ola I think it's Englund. Anyway, he has a. Did you watch the episode with Buster?
I watched like the first 10 minutes, but yeah.
Okay, right. There was a moment in it where Buster speaks about his. I guess I don't want to misquote him, but the way I interpreted what he was saying was his kind of philosophy with like the way in which he produces, and especially like the way I interpret it is mainly when he's talking about Humanity's Last Breath, with how distorted and low tuned all his guitars are, and just the general ambience and production around the actual like raw instruments. He takes a lot of inspiration from the like EDM space in terms of like the massiveness of how, you know, how loud everything sounds. His guitars are basically in bass range, where they're like essentially like the guitars kind of become just another small segment of the massive wall of sound that is in there. So tie it all back to that album. I was kind of relating that because I know Buster is so big in the scene and everyone is head over heels for everything Buster touches. His production is, you know, arguably the most talked about production in the, you know, modern metalcore space or the modern metal space for the last year or so. Everyone's like, oh, it's a Buster mix. Every band that's in like that Thal space is trying to get Buster on. Everyone wants to sound like Buster. So the thing I was talking about with Diamond Construct's album is it feels very much so in that same vein, in that kind of same ballpark philosophy wise as what Buster talks about with, it's more of like an EDM soundscape as opposed to a metal track. And now it happens to have guitars in it and it's distortion, a lot of distortion, and it has breakdowns. So I guess it's categorized as still metal. But to me, it felt like something outside of the traditional metal circle, you know? There was so much going on. But the flip side of that is that I would have liked to be able to hear the notes being played, because like you said, some of the riffs on the album are absolutely sick, but sometimes it's so low and there's so much shifting, there's so many fucking octaves shifted down that like you can't even hear some of the actual notes being played sometimes, and it's like the mix is redlining for the entire thing. It's like hurting your ears to actually listen to. So I think like sound wise overall, you know, you hear it with Alpha Wolf, a lot of pitch shifting, all those like squealy noises and stuff.
Some of those chords, I'm like, I don't know what notes these are. It's just...
Yeah. I literally said in the video, like I was just going off my head talking about it, but I said it sounds like Alpha Wolf on heroin. Like it was just like, it's literally like, it's Alpha Wolf on all of the drugs. Like that's what it is. It's mental.
It's a perfect way of describing it.
Yeah.
Like when it's
go. Sorry.
Like, I was just gonna say, it's like it's so compressed. Like the sound is so compressed. Yeah, it's just redline the whole time. Like I personally can't do it for that long. But you know, speaking of the Buster mixes, I have like this take two where so many bands are using Buster as a producer, and I wonder how long it's going to take before people get fatigued, because I'm hearing the sound. I'm like, okay, this is a Buster mix, and then I'm hearing a similar sort of feeling in production, and so it starts to sound a little bit samey. Even like stylistically, the song with the riffs and everything seem kind of samey. And the same argument can be made about Will Putney mixes. Will Putney is, I think he did the New North Lane, so that was something different because it was a little bit more EDM. But most of the time, when you hear Will Putney mix, it's like more like Counterparts, Every Time I Die. There's a certain sound. It's just kind of punchy.
Jordan Fish is getting his own sound as well. And we're going like, oh, Jordan's really touching this as well. Like, yeah.
These producers have a lot of effect to make certain sound kind of samey after some time.
Yeah.
So
there's the Buster and Ravada like package deal that almost seems to be a thing. It's like you get the Buster mix, you get the Ravada visual. Now it's always a sick time. You get it. It's like it was with the alt, the Orphan Breed with alt. They had the Buster mix and so the sick video. Like the videos, Ravada's sick, man. But
Sweden's killing it.
Yeah, and then you had Grayscale who did like all of Ravada stuff, Buster mix as well. And I do agree with you. As much as I love all these bands individually and they make great fucking music and the videos always look unbelievable, but you know, Humanity's Last Breath as well, obviously using Ravada, then you have, it's like you can almost, what was initially quite unique to me with like seeing Humanity's use Buster and then have the Ravada, it was like, fuck, this is so unique, this is so fresh, the visuals look great. Then you start to see alt, Grayscale, there's other smaller bands that are using Ravada that also have like mixes very similar, and you're like, okay, this is starting to lose that initial, you know, shine to it that was there.
It's a story as old as time itself. Like it's look at the 80s. Everyone had the same like cheesy keyboard snare sound. Like in every fucking song it sounded like that. Because when that happened for the first time, everyone goes, "Oh fuck, what's this? I love this. Let's do this in everything." Same thing happened when T-Pain discovered autotune, right? Everyone's, "Oh shit, let's really do autotune vocals. We'll stand out." And then everything becomes samey. Anything that's new and hits and cuts through, everyone will flock to. Same thing with like, you know, Blink-182 and Green Day, and then comes Sum 41 and New Found Glory, and like everyone develops the same sound because it works and it's cool and it's new until people get tired of it, and then we move on. And we're kind of feeling a little bit in metalcore, right? And what's the next thing? And perhaps, unless Burb, maybe you want to weigh in before I segue to something else.
Well, yeah, I have a perfect segue. This is like the thing is like, yeah, I love it when bands take bold risks by working with other producers. Sometimes not even metal. Sometimes they work with like a pop producer, and it's a completely different sound. Like again, I'm going to reuse Thrice, but when they did Visu, there wasn't even a metal producer. It was like a pop producer that worked with pop artists.
Such a good sound, that record.
Yeah, it was such a totally different sound entirely, and it reshaped the band. And also other bands were trying to follow the same suit as like Visu a little bit too. So it's like, but it's a risk. It could really hurt the band if it sounds like people are like, "Oh, what is this?" Right? But there was an interesting post, speaking of like regurgitated metalcore and a lot of the same kind of production stuff. This band Omerta, who is like a new metalcore band, you know, anime music videos, very underground, chaotic, all over the place. So that's kind of their sound. But there's some drama going on Twitter with this band because they tweeted out, if I can read this, it's a little bit lengthy, but they said they retweeted a post about this band called Wind Waker with the album art, and the album art.
Wind Waker.
Yeah, and the album art looks like AI. It looks like AI. Apparently, it's not actually AI, but it just looks like an AI art, like a little bit stylistically. It looks kind of similar to majority of, you know, the metalcore scene right now. So Omerta says, and retweeted it, "There's something fascinating about how the advent of AI tooling has simultaneously enabled and culled out the creativity bankrupt who have made entire careers LARPing as artists. Aside from the obviously AI-generated cover art and suspiciously familiar album title, there is nothing hyper-violent here. This is exactly why we have time and time again advocated for violent art. For a while now, there has been a trend among our peers towards incorporating dated pop production, recycling uninspired gent riffing, and incredibly vapid, lacking in any chromaticism, melodic chord progressions, in seemingly every other genre, including specific subgenres of alternative music. Creative evolution seems to reflect the milieu. Now, for whatever reason, this has not been the case among the metalcore Redditor, basement, gent, white bread, Sirius XM, octane-core crowd, who might be allergic to innovation, even preferring cheap nostalgia bait over anything dangerous enough to skirt the edge. Case in point, the soy-distant hyperpop metal tag when the pioneers of hyperpop themselves have proclaimed it dead for years." There's one more paragraph. Let me just...
Is this a tweet? Sorry. Tweet. How long is a tweet?
You can... Yeah, they're yapping. So the last paragraph is, "There is a reason the recently disaffected have found more solace in communities and styles of art/music outside of the strangely primitive and pedestrian scene. When the descendants and estranged seek out their place in this world, what exactly is this supposed to be an alternative to? This defanged, neutered, and lobotomized slop is the consequence of years of propping up uninteresting people with absolutely nothing compelling to say. We need art, dangerous, chaotic, intentional, unafraid, antisocial, violent art.
That sounds like AI wrote that, man. That literally sounds like they got ChatGPT to write a complaint about something.
ChatGPT just cracked its knuckles and went, hang on. Wow.
Oh my
can
gosh.
you before we give our take, can you just translate, Burb, what the fuck that meant to you?
So look, the thing is, I retweeted it and made a comment about it, but I was kind of talking about the music and not really the AI art side of things. But it seems like what they're trying to say is that they're advocating that we need more risk, we need more risk takers, because we need more innovation, we need more creativity, because they're shouting out a lot of bands in the scene that are breeding innovation, and basically they're kind of like shitting on octane-core. We need less generic, uninspired stuff in favor of more violent, dangerous, chaotic things that are more risk worthy to breed innovation for the scene.
Okay. I do have I have a hot take, but go on, Drew.
Yeah, just sorry. So this was, did you say Outbreak was the band that tweeted this? What was the name of the band?
Omerta. Omerta.
And what did this have to do with Wind Waker? Sorry, Wind Waker was an album. They released an album that has AI artwork. Did I lose the entire point of that?
So they retweeted the Wind Waker album art because someone posted it, and then they just went off on AI art, and then basically just went off on a little bit of a tangent, just talking about how we need more inspirational, artwork, and then also talking about the music. We need more risk rather than seeming like, more carbon copies.
Okay.
That's how I interpret it.
Right. Okay. Steve, did you have a point already?
Yeah.
Let's hear it, Steve.
Take it away. I'm
still
trying to get around that.
We need something for everyone. I think there's no bad thing in humanity and society to have something for everyone. Some people are going to love and enjoy and be inspired by the more raw, the more violent, the more viscerally interesting, the more human, the more innovative and creative in introspection and reflectiveness and all that stuff, and bringing more of that creativity out, 100%. And in meticulously created human art, yeah, totally for that. Also, I think there is a place for the more like vanilla or octane-core music, whatever, because that is also very enjoyable to a lot of people. And if you just have one or the other, you're going to create mad imbalance. I would agree that perhaps right now we might have too much of an abundance of the more, straight-laced things that work, because similar to the movie industry, you're getting a lot of fucking remakes and a lot of sequels to things and not that much innovative new stuff, because it's expensive to take gambles on things that you don't know if it's going to land or not. But that's where interesting art happens. We're getting a little bit of that in the music industry for the same reasons. Record labels want to know this will sell. There is a ready, waiting audience for this. Money talks in that way. So, of course, we're going to have a bit more of that. However, I don't see there a big risk here, because the bands that do take the risk and do the bold thing outside the ordinary are going to eventually, as with evolution, make the correct kind of like mistake or change or alter that cuts through and becomes bigger than anything else. Sleep Token is the obvious example of this in recent history. They're doing something that no one else is doing in that way. And so therefore, they're now one of the biggest bands in the world. They've not generated or done standard things with the music, the production, and the kind of songwriting and the rest. It is unique. And therefore, if it's also good, it connects somehow with humanity, boom, it explodes. And I don't necessarily see a problem with the influence of new like AI art, for example, because that's still quite unique right now. I've just looked up the Wind Waker album cover, and yeah, you can tell that's definitely generated by AI. But I've never seen an image like that before. Is it not? Oh, sorry. That's created by a human.
Apparently.
But it's got like an AI. It's obviously a human who's done it to
that's
maybe
gotta be
try and make it look like it's AI. Maybe that's the idea.
Oh.
But yeah.
Wow.
Steve, we need to clip that.
Well,
every time I hear Steve speak now, I have music playing in my head, like real dramatic, like mountain climbing music, and I fucking love it. It's the best thing. Ever since I seen your comment on his post, bro, I just can't get it out of my head now. It's the greatest.
Yeah, I know, right? It's going to be a soundbite for travel influencers and other things.
Literally.
To summarize, it's all worthy. It's all fine. Like, do you? If you love basic ass pop punk, great. Create it. Make more of that in the world. people will be ready and waiting for that, and they'll enjoy that. And maybe that kind of music will have the right kind of person in the crowd crying because of how much it means to them and they emotionally connect. Like, we're all so different. Let's allow everyone to make whatever art they want, and let's not crap on each other for whatever decisions we make. Like, I don't. You can just, if you don't like a certain cookie cutter style of radio rock, don't listen to it. You don't have to. I fucking like Nickelback and Sleep Token, so fight me.
Yeah, I know, and I do agree. So to give some more context, after this tweet went like a little bit viral for them, generally the consensus is everyone is agreeing with them. Everyone's like, go off Omerta. Omerta wins. Yes, we need this. So Omerta is really winning with this tweet, but not to be like a contrarian, but when I see stuff like that, I try to have an independent thought. And for me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just going to actually retweet or read my tweet to them, because it's going to sound better than me just going off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I said, Omerta is bold to call out octane-core, and I absolutely agree to an extent. I find the heavy music scene has recently been at its most creative and innovative these past few years. The metalcore Redditor, basement gent, white bread, Sirius XM core crowd are listeners who don't have the want or need to be musically challenged, or they're newbies who are getting into heavy music. There's listeners who don't need dangerous, chaotic, intentional, unafraid, antisocial, violent art, but instead safe, easy, fun, accessible, satisfying art, because gateway music is important to get the larger demographic into the scene. Music is subjective and based off personal experiences, so everyone's listening needs are different. So yes, we need art that pushes boundaries to breed innovation, but we also need safe, accessible art for casual music listeners. We need a balance of both, and that is why I believe we're in a very healthy time for core music. I, however, personally love being challenged musically, and luckily, Omerta backs up what they're saying, because their new song fucks. Their new song is actually sweet.
What a great period at the end of a sentence.
Yeah. So yeah, Steve, I agree with you, man. I just wanted to get your thoughts before,
nice. I hadn't read any of your tweet or that whole thing, so it's cool that we kind of align on that. But why not balance? Why not all of the things?
Yeah, and I'm vocal about, I've made videos in the past where I said like metalcore is boring. Sure, yeah, it's a little bit rage baity, but the purpose of that video was to talk about like some common tropes and criticisms to help breed innovation, because I totally understand, and I think you guys, as being reactors too, is that when you're actually like listening to viewer requests, you realize everyone's different. There's people who just want those big hooky choruses, the simplistic structure. There's also certain people that you probably know their names in your community, and you're like, okay, this person always loves the crazy prog stuff. There's just music for everybody. And so if every music is just like violent art, just chaotic, genre bending, that appeals to a certain crowd. It's not going to be everybody's style. Everybody is so different. That's what I mean by based off personal experiences. Some people like being challenged because they grew up with, for me, I grew up with some jazz fusion through my dad, or some prog stuff. My dad doesn't even know this stuff, like with the genres or anything. He just listened to it. But for me, I was challenging my brain. So when I hear prog now, I love that sound too. But my mom loved pop music, so I like pop stuff too. So that's why I like doing my reaction videos, because I feel like I have an open mind to many different styles, but I understand everyone's just a little bit different. But
for sure,
yeah, there's no shortage of choice out there. I think one of you mentioned that at some point, but we're so spoiled for choice. Like, I mean, I understand where the band's coming from, but if every band is trying to push the genre forward and doing something extremely progressive, then it kind of eliminates the need for, like, progressive music doesn't really exist anymore, because if everything is progressive, then there is no such thing as progressive music. There has to be some base level of ability for the masses to just be able to listen to stuff. If everything becomes genre defining and bending,
yeah,
progressive music then would be cookie cutter. It'd be something so simple, like, whoa.
Why not do something we've heard already? That'd be really unique.
The whole statement kind of falls apart, and it's a little bit. Is it a little bit like ironic, or does it contradict itself just by default? Because the nature of being progressive is that you're stepping away from the masses. But if they want everyone to start trying to do that, then it's not actually progressive anymore. It just seems,
if everyone's special, no one is, right? It's
exactly.
But also,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking for ourselves, if we did a 2-hour stream where every single song we reacted to was completely pushing the boundaries of something wild and innovative, our heads would be fucking fried.
I would just
at the
want
end of 2
the most
hours.
basic chorus. I would just want the most basic song structure ever if I was to do 2 hours of like the most mental prog. I'd be like, just give me the most basic metalcore, hooky chorus and a breakdown at the end. That's what I'd be asking for. So, but like, just even if they specifically, I haven't read the full tweet, and nor do I ever plan on hearing that again.
I read it anyway.
Like that shit. That was AI who wrote that. Like they didn't write that. They were like, look, I have this problem. Make this tweet for me. Like, but yeah, if they specifically shared Wind Waker's, if that's what they used as like the visual aspect of their tweet to say this is like an AI thing or whatever, even though it isn't. Like, you could argue that we're just in an era right now where AI is the hot thing. And if you look back in like 20 years ago, I'm sure if you took all of the album artworks, like even if you look at like some of the Sumerian artworks from, like the old Veil of Maya stuff, you ever see like the YouTube thumbnails where it's like Periphery, Veil of Maya? They all have like a similar art style when it comes to the text for the band. And you just look back on that and it's a fondness of that time. Even though I wasn't listening to that at the time, I know what that period looks like visually. And I'm sure it won't be much different in 20 years time from now. People are like, I'm sick of the AI thing. To be honest, even just to make it relatable to maybe you guys a little bit more, or specifically my stuff, when Photoshop brought out the like AI stuff that you can use to like, circle here and type it, that was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, this is going to revolutionize my thumbnails. I used it for like a month, and there's only so much you can do with it that is going to really translate just for what we do, like there is some really cool little like features and stuff that you can use, but I found that it's actually not made as much of a difference as I thought it might have made in the first like week of me using it. I was like, wow, this is going to change the game. You just start to adapt and it becomes an additional tool, so who knows, 10 years time, maybe we'll have a completely different opinion of what we're talking about right now, but it's probably just a bit of a fad maybe at the moment.
The pendulum swings continuously. We go too far one direction and we fight against it and we bring it back. Like so much of the production right now is so tight and tidy and incredible. Do you know what I think is going to happen? A couple of years, some band is going to come out and go massive because of how raw and basic their mix and their sound is. People will be craving that because it'll be different. This sounds like it was recorded with one mic on the drum kit just hanging over the top. It's like, yeah, and isn't that cool? Fuck yeah, it's cool. We'll get back to more of that sound. Like we just swing back and forth and overcorrect and just try new things.
So well said. And to relate it to us actually with our content creation, I feel like everyone has like almost a similar looking thumbnails and similar structure to videos. And then Drew actually experimented that by being more raw, by no thumbnails, very basic title, and I really admire him for that. I think we talked about it before, but I don't know, like are you interested in doing something like that again with your channel?
Yeah, we did briefly touch on it. Like we discussed before, it was very hard to actually gauge how well or not well that was doing, because I might check out a band that's really unknown and have no thumbnail for it, but then I could check out the next song would be Bring Me, and that would get loads of views regardless because it's Bring Me. It can be a lot to do with the title. As to how eye-grabbing something is, I think just objectively, if you have like a nice colored thumbnail that's shot with the correct lighting, it's going to be more eye-catching. But I guess my idea was just to see and experiment to see if I can, one, save time, because obviously doing the thumbnails takes time, and to see if it has any like visual benefit from an analytics standpoint, where people seem to be resonating with the like really low effort thumbnails back to where reaction videos used to be a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's a great example of like the kind of way in which the pendulum swings, like Steve was saying, where it's like, reaction videos started very raw, and then obviously it started to go into where we're kind of at the moment, where everyone's doing like the most outrageous thumbnails, and maybe we'll go back because people are so fed up with it. But yeah, that was kind of something that just playing around with it. But again, I think we touched on it before, I really enjoy the actual process of making the thumbnails as well. So it was an easy thing for me to just jump back in and say, do you know what? I kind of miss doing that,
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, to kind of close things off, there was someone suggested an interesting question to potentially ask, because no one really, or I've not met anyone yet, who falls into metal like immediately, full throttle, with no questions asked, there's usually some kind of gateway band, especially when it comes to scream vocals, because it's quite an aggressive sound and it kind of can be confusing or alarming. What was your gateway band where you finally went, I fucking love scream vocals, I understand them, they have a place for me? And how did you discover them? What was your first kind of song and in? If you need some time to think, I can start.
It's a really good question because I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint it, but I do have this example of Foo Fighters actually, All My Life, because I remember hearing that song when I was like maybe 11 years old, and all my life I've been searching for something. And then he gets to that break, like not really a breakdown, but the bridge part where it gets more aggressive, like all my life. I remember just hearing that, just loving the aggression. There was something about the energy to that part was easily my favorite part of the song, but I also love the slower whispery vocal in the beginning too. So I like that. And then I think I was playing like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 back in the day, and they had Rise Against, and enjoyed it, and another band refused, or that was later on actually. To be honest, I know I always talk about this band, but it could have been Thrice, because I think my brother, they were into punk and skate punk, and they showed me some Thrice stuff, and I remember just really enjoying the mix of screams and singing stuff, and I think I was just pulled in, but I couldn't do the full screamy stuff. Like they had one song called Paper Tigers, which is just like,
I was just thinking about Paper Tigers. That is relentless.
That song's so heavy. And I remember I would skip that song on the
CD because
it was
heavy.
Too much.
Too much. Now I'm like, give me the fucking Paper Tigers.
I want more Paper Tigers. That's exactly me. Exactly me. That's cool, what about you, Drew?
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe easier for me to kind of think of it off the top of my head because I'm not in the metal sphere as long as you guys have been. But the one that comes to mind, like again, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what, but the vocals were always the part of metal that took me the longest to really come around to. The instrumental side of things was what really hooked me initially. So the earliest example I can think of where, I kind of look at it from the point of view, maybe it was because of the band I was listening to, but I feel like I just opened up a part of my brain that I didn't really know existed from a musical standpoint. I always knew I loved music, but there just was something that didn't unlock until I started listening to Tool. I know Tool is kind of like known as this progressive psychedelic band, so I kind of look at it as like, oh, they opened my third eye, because all the nerd
That's
fans
great.
always talk about that shit, But Tool was the band that got me into like prog music, and I guess that more, kind of it defined a lot of my tastes. But to speak more specifically about the vocals, because Tool's vocals are quite easy to get into, I would, say for most people, it's more the dynamic elements of the actual instrumentals that make Tool a little bit more in the niche side of things when it comes to like pop music and stuff. But Meshuggah is probably the first band that I remember starting to enjoy the vocal side of things. And again, it was more to do with the complexity of the instrumentals. That was what initially got me into the band. And the vocals were just always that thing that were there. But I just kind of enjoyed the instrumentals so much and the groove to their overall music, and just the wacky nature of the polyrhythms and just how much it fucked my brain up. And again, that like part in my brain that was, firing off these, it was just something was going. And then eventually, just like you always say, Steve, with like exposure therapy, over time, people always said it. They were like, trust me, bro, because I always said it in my videos. You can go back and look at all my older videos when I first started checking out Meshuggah. I always was like, bro, the screaming, I just can't do it. People are like, bro, give it time. People used to tell me, oh, I fall asleep to Meshuggah. And I'm like, yous are absolutely insane. And now it's like, I understand it, because Meshuggah is so like, it has that like psychedelic element to it as well. It has that like soothing, almost like because it's so repetitive in a lot of the rhythms.
Wall of sound.
Yep.
It's like you can really almost get like hypnotized by it, where you're like, okay, I've been following this pattern for so long, and it will have a slight adjustment, and then obviously it gets very soothing in a way. And that's such a full circle moment to think about me talking about Meshuggah like this now, because 4 or 5 years ago when I first started checking them out, or whatever it was, I looked at comments and it was like, bro, I fall asleep to this shit. And I'm like, you need to see a doctor. So, so that would be me. Meshuggah, I think, is the first band I could think of that like really exposed me to vocals that I was like,
it's
totally understandable.
They're intense vocals too.
Yeah, for sure,
100%.
For sure.
But what you spoke to there is that you essentially you accepted that those vocals will be what they are, and I will deal with that because I love the music enough that I'm fine with it. That's kind of how I was in the era of like Thrice and Paper Tigers. I'm like, I'll accept the fact that sometimes they're screaming because I love the music enough. But then eventually, A Day to Remember came out with a cover song of Since You've Been Gone by Kelly Clarkson, a great fucking pop hit song. And they did a great like rock catchy cover of it. And then the second verse, they go into the scream vocals. And I think because I knew the song, I knew the melody that was behind the vocals initially, the vocals weren't scary in that moment because you're like, this is just fucking Kelly Clarkson. You go, oh, it's just a vocal tool. That's all it is. The lyrics within that might not be like aggressive and angry. They could be like Since You've Been Gone shit. And that's sort of unlocked in my head. That is just a mode of expression. And I went in a deep dive, listened to A Day to Remember. And that was my first like proper metalcore thing I went deep on. And that band had a big impact on me, not just accepting, but seeking out fucking scream vocals.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, the cover songs do so well for like gateway into metal. Those punk goes pop stuff. Like we need more of that.
Yeah,
100%.
I think like what you were saying, Steve, it's once you start to accept the vocals as just another instrument, maybe specifically in metal, but I suppose you could apply this logic to any genre, but I feel like it applies maybe a little bit more to metal because of how jarring the vocals can be when you first get into it. But once you start to see the vocals as not some, you know, demented lunatic on a stage that's screaming at the top of his lungs, and you start to see it as like a tool to add emotion to the already extremely, you know, creative and emotionally driven instrumental side of things, that's when you can really appreciate it, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
And metal
100%.
music, as a result, is just the best music you can possibly listen to. And that's why we love talking about it. And hopefully you've enjoyed listening to this as well. Thank you, Burb, Drew, and myself. Awkward thing to thank myself. Seems ridiculous. But thank you to you for listening to this. Thanks, Steve.
No.
You did great.
It's good. Pat yourself on the back, man.
Well done,
You're
Steve.
so good at the
Mate,
intros and outros. You're good.
As RuPaul
Steve.
says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anyone else? Am I right?
Absolutely.
Thanks, folks. And we'll
Cheers,
see you
lads.
next
Appreciate
episode.
it.
Peace.